Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it as always from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time and archived on YouTube channel L.A. Little. You can catch me there if you miss me here, but of course if you're here you can catch me live. Numbers 303-912-9110 if you want to text in any questions. I just ask that you tell me direction and time frame you're looking at, and you can also send it to support@tatoday.com. I'll pick them up there as well. If you have a login on live stream, you can leave me a message right there in the chat window, and of course I can pick those up and address whatever those questions may be. Hopefully you have a few, because I do enjoy the interaction. As far as today, what kind of action? Well, the same sort of action we always get. Up, right? It's always up. Let's pop over and let's look at the ending numbers here. Today the standout actually was not the ones you would probably think, but the Russell. The Russell stood out, nice big gain, heading up towards that ABCD structure 1183 now, 6 points away from that one, almost a percent higher. Everything else really struggled to stay higher, but the magic number 2000, they close it over 2000.02. And you could see it right at the end of the day. They were determined to keep that thing over 2,000. And they did. Elsewhere, nothing really major happening. Dollar up again. Gold up some today. A little bounce. Gave a lot of it up, though. Silver did the same thing. And really not that much more to talk about. What we did see was some economic numbers today. Durable goods. We actually had a headline number that was huge, consensus 5.1, actual was 2.26. But if you look at underneath it, right, X out that transportation, because they knew they were going to have a lot of airplane orders in there, it was actually negative 0.8. Same time, you had consumer sentiment. And I saw a headline come across today. It says the consumer sentiment is the highest it's been since 2007. Okay, that really makes me feel good. So I'm not so sure if that does anything for us, but that was another headline today. Richmond Fed, I believe, or actually it was the Dallas Fed was out. I think it was the Dallas Fed today. One of the Feds was out, and it was a little above consensus. So where are we going next? All right, that's always the question we try to tackle. And before I get in that, let me make a programming note again. This Sunday, of course, Monday is Labor Day. Monday, there will be no shows that will be posted, so don't expect a show those days. I'll catch up with you Tuesday next week. As far as the markets, let's start with the S&P. So we get the 2,000 number today. We stay over it, 2,002. But look at what it did. It got back underneath yesterday, so it's an over-under. That's the first time we've seen an over-under on this whole run. And believe me, this has been a run. This is day 13, I believe, 11 up of the 13. Over-under because it's not a 2-bar. You got more volume, so that says it can go test it again tomorrow. And we may see it pop back up there again tomorrow. But that is an over-under. Just tells us we're getting closer and closer to something actually reversing here at some point. Dow Jones actually gave you failures. We got one last night on this swing point high breakdown bar. Tonight they go for the highest one. That was the first of the 2 breakdown bars. Volume up there a lot bigger. You go into it, you have half as much volume, you get over it, you fail, and you do a 2-bar reversal off an extended move. This thing should come back tomorrow. Should have came back today, didn't. Maybe tomorrow. Now, the thing about the indexes is even if you get just one of them, it can affect the others. This one, however, is just 30 stocks. So I wouldn't put a huge amount of weight into the Dow. It would have been better had, from a bearish a reversal pullback viewpoint, it would have been better to see that happen on the S&P, a 2-bar, but it didn't. If we move over to the NASDAQ, NASDAQ actually closes under as well. Top of that was 45.71.14. You close at 45.70, so just underneath it. 2-bar reversal, nope. Got a little bit more volume, so it's a over under. Again, stretched, still not giving it up. NDX was actually an inside day, another doji, that's 2 in a row. A little bit more volume on it. And of course, we talked about the Russell. The Russell got over the highs and pushes higher. Now, one thing I want to note for you here is you see the Russell outperforming today. And if you look elsewhere, you'll see that you actually had world markets in general, quote unquote, outperforming as well. In particular, if we move over and look at the CAC breaks above both swing point lows, retest regen zones, right? Big, strong, powerful move up. A lot of short covering, so it gets over this, gets over both of these retest regenerate zones. So that tells us we're in some sort of a range trade at this point. The reason for switching to the world markets on top of the Russell is that it sure looks to me like the money's still trying to find a place to go. What do? They go pick on anything that's been weak. You saw it there, you saw it here, you saw it in the DAX. I'll show you the DAX next. Here's the DAX, money coming into that. It's coming into its resistance zone. You saw it in the XLE, where the XLE breaks out. It's one of the few that looks cheap. They're trying to put their money somewhere. There's not a lot of choices because everything's just stretched. The setups are not that great now at this point. But there are a few that still have setups. Here was one of them. They go in there, they chase it higher, and then they give it up, and it actually fells. Well, it didn't quite fell, but it looks like it's going to fell as of tomorrow. So money chasing something. And we're not talking about a lot of money. It's the end of the summer. There's just not a lot of money out there. The money really, is going to get going next week again. But, after Labor Day, then everybody comes back to work. But right now, what money there is continues to chase the cheaper stuff. And that typically is what you see at the end of moves, right? You'll see the money start chasing things that don't make sense. Stuff that from an earnings perspective, from a valuation perspective, they're cheap because they are cheap, not because they're good. And just realize that another subtle sign that this thing has extended probably about as far as it's going to go. While we're over in England, in Europe, let's finish with the FTSE. FTSE gets its power move. Finally comes out of that little consolidation, going for the swing point high. FTSE looks to test higher. So the DAX, I want to go back to the DAX because the DAX actually is the main driver in Europe. It's back up, going to do its retest regen now off this swing point low. The DAX was the one hit the hardest off the Ukrainian situation, off the sanctions that have been taking place. I didn't see any late breaking news on Ukraine. Putin was meeting with the president there, but I don't know what the outcome of that was. Switching to Asia, we've got the Hang Seng China 8 shares over under. They came in, if you remember, with some volume into this bar from the 8th. So this 8th bar, you had volume into it, trades back higher, gets back into the high volume bar at the top, but it doesn't over under today. It looks to me like that's going to try to trade lower tonight. If I look at Hong Kong itself, Hong Kong trying to come back in to the swing point high, and I believe, if I remember right, this did not test it. 24896, 24, yeah, yes it did. So it tested into it once already. So still hanging at the highs up here. That's the two strong, or at least the indexes I've been focused on the most. Last night we thought the Nikkei should try to come in. It did. Taipei had finished off an ABCD structure, did a doji, does another one tonight, a little bit more volume, so it's an over-under. What else is interesting? Oh, Brazil powers higher. And that actually brings me, and it does a doji up there, so it may have done its move tonight. But if we look at, if we flip over to the ox markets, and then we'll come back to the sectors, you saw some breakouts as well. Like here's the EEM, the emerging markets breakout. If it holds, it'll be a breakout on multiple time frames. I saw a break down in the junk bonds, and I don't, was it the junk bonds? No, it wasn't the junk bonds. I don't remember what it was now. I thought it was the junk bonds. So anyway, it wasn't the junk bonds. So the junk bonds held up. The TLT was coming down some today. Dollar was up a little bit again. And yeah, I don't remember what it was. So let's look at gold and silver. So gold goes up, trying to close the gap. That low was 123.88. It got to it, turned around, doesn't have the volume. It's going to drift back down, it looks like. And silver actually gave it all back. And silver is just in a world of hurt here. It just can't lift. So now if I was, you know, I don't always point all this stuff out. I see it all the time. But if I was a classical guy, I'd be looking at that and say, oh, breakout, right? Today. Well, not so fast. You know, not so fast. I mean, if you're looking at it from a neoclassical, what are you doing? You're looking for this high volume bar. You're seeing a test into it. They can't hold, right? That's the sort of thing you really look for. You know, that's supply and demand. You can't get supply and demand drawing these kinds of lines, folks. Those lines don't give you supply and demand. It's only horizontal. It's the only way you can see it, right? That's a level. It's a horizontal level. That's where supply and demand meets, and occasionally gives you a decent setups. Occasionally, I say on a particular chart, of course, all the time across most charts. But silver is still struggling. Let me see what that weekly looks like. So it's under the low. So this high volume low is 1826, and it's got a little ways to go still. So just can't lift. Just can't lift. All right, let's pop over to the sectors right quick, wrap it up here as far as the initial part of the program. So we already talked about the fact that the indexes are starting to show some subtle signs that they're about ready to roll. If I look at most of these sectors, they're showing the same thing. Here's the IYT can't move, right? I look at the SOX. The SOX is hanging at the low of that reversal bar. Absolutely no volume today. The XLE we already looked at. XLB hanging at the highs, right? XLF does a 2-bar reversal today. That's after an extended move. That should come in as a result. If I look at the XLK, still struggling, can't move. The only one that's really showing strength is the XLV, and of course that's being powered by the biotechs, IBB, you know, BBH. These are the things that are moving it. As a matter of fact, if you look at the NDX and you think about the NDX itself, you have to think about the top three. Apple comes back in today. Microsoft can't lift over that resistance area. Google fading back in as well. SOX we just talked about. What's keeping the NDX up? Same thing, IBB. That's really where the strength is right now. XLY also struggling up here at the highs. Let me get the XLY up. So here's the XLY. It goes over under. That's a 2-bar reversal as well. So you've got another two or three 2-bar reversals, and a few more, actually about 6 of them just hanging at the highs and a few trying to pull back in. So what does it tell me? When I add them all up again, just like last night, you know, I suggested that we're going to get sideways to down. I suspect that is my view again tomorrow. But folks, you know, getting a pullback here is not something you should be betting on in any large way if you're trying. What you really want, and I explained this to members today, you know, what you're really looking for, here's an example here. You're looking for a push, right, that comes back and then tries to test and can't get over it, right? Can't get over it. That's when you finally going to get a retrace, right, of size. Until you get those failed tests, it doesn't matter. And right now, you're just pushing. You don't even have the first pullback yet. The first pullback just sets up the retest, right? And that's what's going to be the real test, right? Is when this thing finally pulls back and then turns around and comes back. Well, there's two things: how far, and then how does it come back up? Those will be the things that tell you where a better short is, you know, when you're looking at this versus where it is now. So just realize that that is the sort of thing that one should be focused on more so than this, you know, first pullback off the top. The reason I keep saying, you know, as we get up here and we're starting to see more and more of this stretch, is that you shouldn't be buying much up here, and that's the point of sideways to down. You really shouldn't be buying up here. It's a little bit late for that. Okay, let's move to questions. Again, you can type them in, text them to me. I got a couple texts here as I was talking, and of course you can email me well, actually you can email me there too, but I do pick them up off support during the show. So let me see here. So the first question, let me type these two in: EPI and CLVS. So let me get these guys in. Let's see what these look like. All right, so CLVS, and what was that first one again? EPI. Okay, so let's take EPI first. Wisdom Tree. Oh, so this is India. So this is an India ETF. I'm not sure what the underlying is on it. So right now it's just consolidating on a weekly. And let me see what your time frame was here. Didn't give me a time frame. So I'm going to assume short term. Well, the hard thing here is, of course, you've got a lot of gaps because this is India. So it trades overnight, and this thing gaps up and gaps down every morning. Right now, what I see, and this is interesting because India itself is at highs, right? And this index isn't anywhere near the highs. Let me quickly, hang on just a second. Let me flip back over to the world markets. And let me take a look at the Indian market. Okay, so it went up, over, back under. Okay, so I got reeled back in. So coming back over here now. So you can see this one's weaker, and that's because of what it's against. This does look like a failure up here though. So it gets over its suspect breakout. It's doing a retest regen. If you want to short this thing, what you want to see is you want to see it fell here. You want to see it get up underneath this. So trade down here. And then that probably gets you back into at least a retest regen off this high, which is, as you see, where the TA today support zones show up. So I'd make it break underneath this bar, and if it looks like that's going to hold, right, and you can pretty much probably get that during the day when it opens here, then you can get a trade down into at least to this one, and then that one, and your stop just has to be right over the top. Of course, the stop here is pretty hard because you're going to gap. So in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, yeah, you want to see it happen tomorrow too. And the reason for that is you've already got the retest regenerate immediately here. This breakout over this bar, right, the July 30th, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's already over 6. So it's gonna be a tough short if you're trying to short it. That's what you're trying to do. So man, yeah, that's a tough short because the reward risk just isn't there. So it's a hard trade. I'd be hard pressed. I'd probably look somewhere else or look for something else. Let's look at the other one, CLVS. You know that it does that does look like it's going to come in EPI, but I don't see the reward risk. So oncology, of course, everything healthcare has got big moves. Now this one is coming off the lows, huh? So I wonder if that was earnings. So big volume. You know, the good thing about it is it tested, and it tested multiple times on the weekly, right? All these tests down here, that low can't get lower. What do? You flip around, you take it back the other way. Now it's trying to get over it, and does today, which says you're doing a retest regen off this low. You're deep into the bar now, so you can get to the other side, which says you're going to try to get up here. So that's a pretty good move, actually. It's about another $10. Let's go back to the daily. Yeah, so it looks to me like this one is going to power higher. Your ideal entry is down here. I don't know that you'll get the ideal, so you might want to look for that intersection right there, 47. Let me see what this looks like intraday, or do I have my charts up? I don't. Let me try to pull them up while I'm talking and see if I can look at it intraday and see what it looks like. So because I'd be curious as to what the flow was the last 2 days to try to measure where you might be able to pick it up at a better price. You hate to buy it up here, right? Because where's your stops? Your stops really have to be underneath this swing point low, right? I mean, this high is low. That's way back at 43.61, which is not exactly where one would want to be shorting this thing, or actually trading back to. So let me get CLVS up and let's look at it intraday here. Let me pop the chart up. So detach that, bring it over, let's size it a little bit and get it so it's on the screen so you can see it. Alright, here we go. So let's go inside of it 2 days. And I'll put it on 15, see what it looks like. Get the volumes up here. 47. Yeah, that does look like the spot. I think that's probably the best you can get is this intersection intraday, right? Those price points are low is 47.72, 47.86. So about 47.75-ish in that area. And then if it gets that low, if it doesn't, it's really this broad thing. And so I'd probably play a stop tight underneath here and maybe potentially leg in there and again here. And then my stop is down there. And that's probably the way you have to trade into that to get a risk reward that makes sense. And then if it heads up again, then of course, you know, then you can play for that 60 number it might want to go to. All right, so that's 2 questions. Let's see if I have any more here while I'm still on, and if not, I'll probably wrap it up early just with a couple more thoughts. The market, when it when it gets on these kinds of runs, it's like impossible to stop it, right? Or at least it feels impossible. In those cases, you just have to just go with it, right? You just have to stay with it, I guess. Not, when I say go with it, I mean just stay with what you're doing. If you start guessing the tops, and start scaling out of everything, or actually selling out of everything, most people don't scale, then what if it just keeps going for another 6 or 7 bars, right? And you get a little small, maybe you don't even get the pullback, you get this kind of action. You never even get anything worth buying, and then next thing you know, it's going again. So these kinds of straightaway moves, they're not sustainable. We know they're not over a longer period of time. Over the short term, they can continue, and you see it doing it day after day here. We've been talking about it for 4 or 5 days. You've only had 1-2 days down. Every other day has been up. So that type of a move, yeah, we know it's not sustainable, but it doesn't mean it's going to come back. This thing could do 6 or 7 bars across and then leg higher again. So, you just have to stay with it until it fails. We got over-unders, we got failures on the Dow, but it's a thin index. You got over-unders, dojis, We've got a couple more 2 bars on the sectors, but other than that, we just don't have anything to tell us it's going to fail yet. And because we don't have that, you simply have to stay with it. I would expect some sideways action. We may test the tops again tomorrow, but you know, we're getting close. We're getting close to some sort of a retrace that potentially will set up something that we can buy again outside of what we already have. All right, folks. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourself. I see you next time. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily NeoTA wrap. Have yourself a great night. I'll catch you tomorrow. We'll do it all again. Good night, folks.